And hello, good people of the internet. It is Tommy Kelly here once again from adventuresinwiwi.com and a host of other websites I'll have you know as well. But they all kind of more or less point to adventuresinwiwi.com or pages therein. So you could go for the40servants.com or now the new and improved 40servants.com, where I've saved you so much time and energy where you don't have to type THE anymore. I'm also now on Patreon, where you can support my work as I generate all this great content for you out there and in the world. And to get that, you can go to tommykelly.com, which is TOMMIE Kelly.com, or just search me on Patreon, or go to adventuresinwiwi.com and you'll find a link there. So, now that we have that all done, let's get on to the topic of this week's podcast, which is That Place. And I guess before I get there, I should describe a bit of, or set the scene a bit here of where I'm recording this. And the reason why is because I think it's relevant to the thing I'm going to talk about. I think setting probably is an element to it. So at the moment, I'm sitting in my office, in my house, where I spend like 95% of my time. And I'm in front of my computer, but on one of my computer screens, I've thought for a bit of atmosphere, I would go to YouTube and put in one of those fires, you know, that you can watch videos of a fire burning. So I have a fire burning beside me on one of the screens. I actually do have an electric fire in the room with, one of those ones that has that fake kind of fire thing, but it's behind me, so I can't really see it, so it wouldn't add to the effect. And also, electricity wasting and all that. It's also, I have the blinds down, I've incense lit, and I have doors closed. I have the altar is all, I'm looking around it, my voice is getting low, has the lights and the candles and all. So it's all, it's nicely set and all that. Why is this important? Well, it's important because that place that I want to talk about is a kind of physical place that I have been to a number of times in my life that seems to occur when you talk about certain ideas or beings or topics. Now, what does that all mean? I'll start when it first happened, years and years ago. I've spoken about this before, and I speak about it a lot on a number of podcasts that I've been talking about recently. But how I got into all this first is that I had an auntie who was into it, and she used to live in London. And she would come over a couple of times a year to visit my mum and my dad. It was my mum's sister. And she was big into theosophy and, general spirituality. Louise Hay and Alice Bailey. And she was into Stuart Wilde. And she left some Stuart Wilde books in the house. Or she gave some Stuart Wilde books to my mum and my dad. And so that's how I became aware of Stuart Wilde. But when she would come over and she would visit, I would just wreck her head a bit, trying to find out about, her topic or what she thought on certain things, like what was, what's the meaning of life? What happens when we die? What is it all about? All those things. So it was great and all that. And I'm sure I was wrecking everyone's head because, I was probably 12, maybe 13 when this started. And they wanted to talk about grown-up things. And they'd be sitting there drinking and having a good time. And I'd be going, yeah. But what happens when you die? And or why are we here, or whatever it was. But what happened then was then later myself and my sister, who's a year older than me, so quite contemporary, and we're actually Irish twins. Irish twins are when you're born within a year of each other. So we are mostly. She's born a week before me, a year. So we would start talking about these subjects, and then later and we'd talk about the, not demons or anything, but just about stuff that's kind of creep you out a bit if you talk about it. And what happened was that the sense of the room, the feeling of the room would change. It's almost as if, when people talk about like the temperature dropped. Well, it was like that, only the temperature didn't drop. The room kind of dropped. The atmosphere of the room, it got thick and gluggy and heavy. And this overpowering feeling of being looked at, of being stared at, that someone is watching you. But almost as if it was from within you that this was happening. But definitely there was a physical element to this, that it felt like the room had changed. So much so Well, first of all, I thought it was just, this is just me. Am I just getting creeped out here? Is this the feeling of being, creeped out? And I kind of had to dismiss that because I've been creeped out before, I've been scared before, and it's not the same thing. I know I was young at the time, but I remember I had watched War of the Worlds when I was quite young, the original one, and that just absolutely, absolutely terrified me. And the whole idea of, the that eye thing comes down and comes in and is looking at people, and that just terrified me. And that should have been a very similar feeling, because it would be the sense of being watched, being stared at, but also the sense of horror or creepiness. But it wasn't the same as that. That just felt like horror, like being creeped, like being scared, like child being scared. But this was different because it definitely had a physical kind of reality to it. So I thought it was just me. So I didn't mention it for a while. But then whatever I had mentioned to my sister, or she mentioned it to me, and she described it exactly the same way. She had exactly the same feeling about it, or that the sense that the energy of the room kind of dropped. I know energy, it's not cool to talk about it, but that's what it felt like. Like the energy, the feeling of the room dropped, and the sense of being scared, but also there was an element of, or the sense of being stared at, but also there was an element of being scared too, like because it was freaky, like it was kind of as if you were being. It's that thing of once you start staring at the universe starts staring back. So once like kind of felt that we were talking about these things, it's almost as if they had that in turn led to them having an interest in us. So this happened a number of times, and myself and my sister recognized it and labeled that feeling when it happened as that place. So that if we began talking about these topics, and we talk about them fairly regularly, but it wasn't like every day or whatever, but it happened fairly regularly over the course of whatever. When we could talk about it for ages, and then someone go, I'm in that place. Or she would go, I'm in that place. And it would be usually coincide with the other person being as well. And it wasn't something that gradually happened. It kind of almost, you slipped into it, and there it was, as if you slipped into a different realm. And all these words don't describe what it is at all, because it just kind of sounds, you know, no, not what it is. But so that was interesting, and I kind of goes, well, maybe that only happens something exclusive to myself and my sister, or the setting I was in, which is why I was telling you about I have the fire going here. It's lovely. I can't put up the sound, obviously, because it would interfere with the recording. So I thought maybe it was just that, and it was just kind of more or less only happened in the sitting room in my house then, or my mum's house now, whatever. But it was the family house at the time. So maybe I was thinking of something to do with the setting, but it turned out no, it wasn't necessarily, because we could talk about it in the kitchen and it would happen. So we kind of, as when you become teenagers and you get on with your life, we kind of stopped, talking about these things. But um, it was something that that we had noticed over a number of months or years. I assume it's years, but memory is weird and all that. The next time it happened to me, was with, so it would have been I just would have been 20, I'd say. So a number of years later, and it was with my friend Dave. And at this time, I had moved out of the house about 2 years. So I moved out when I was 18. Parents had split up. My sister is gone to college at this point, and I'm just after my first real proper split up, or break up of a relationship, where I had been living with the girl, and that rock and roll story of she went off with the singer in the band, all those things. So it was a bit kind of a an interesting time for me, and that kind of thing. And I'd just given up drink as well, because I had been not taking it, I'd been introduced while being in the band to a lot of like partying and different drugs and all that thing. So I kind of away from all that. I just pulled back from all that, because I wanted to become a serious recording artist, and really go for it and stuff. Which that's what you do. So I had moved out of the house, or the flat that I was living with, the girl, the woman, and Dave, who was my friend, who I'd known for a number of years, who I used to live with, in another house that was totally haunted, that we did Ouija boards in, and people, doors locked from the inside, and we heard voices and stuff like that. kind of less time for that as a reality, because that was, the house where, we took loads of drugs and, drank all the time and we were stoned constantly and all that. So there has to be a correlation, or else it's one of those things where you open the door to these things, whatever. Anyway, that house was pretty weird. So my friend Dave, seeing that I was in distress and falling apart and all those things, and he says, "I'm going down to my mum for the weekend. I'm going to hitchhike down. You're coming with me." And I goes, "Well, okay. What else am I going to do?" Because I think that weekend was when the girlfriend was going to come and take all our stuff out of the flat, or I'd moved out of the flat. Something. Anyway, we went away. So Dave was kind of into all this stuff in. Not so much, he wasn't into magic, because I wasn't into magic at the time because I didn't know what it was, but into kind of spirituality, woo woo type stuff, because his mother had or owned like a health shop, but she was also a psychic, and she did readings, and she could look at your face and give you your past lives and all those kind of things. So he was quite exposed to all these kind of things. So I knew he was kind of I was going to say odd, but not odd, woo friendly or whatever, as I was at the time. So or I knew the mother would be. So we went down and whatever, had a number of adventures as we hitchhiked down back. Different story, different time. And arrived at the house or whatever. And found out more that the guy who the mother was going out with, or I don't think they were married at that point, because I don't think divorce was in Ireland at that point. I can't really remember. It's 20 years ago, maybe. Yeah, it is 20 years ago. Wow. And he was a musician, and he was actually in the charts in Ireland at the time, for doing a song. He used to dress up as like an Indian and sing a song, like talk about massive cultural appropriation, and probably something that you would not happen now, not be allowed to happen now. But he had recorded an album that was channeled to him through the wife. I think through the wife, or he appeared, and it was Jimi Hendrix who had come to him either in the vision or channeled, and they had recorded this album together. So a lot of woo-tastic stuff going on here. So it was interesting. So anyway, we were talking. Me and Dave were in the house later on that night, and like I'm saying, I didn't drink at this time, so it's not an alcohol thing, and I wasn't. There was no drugs, because it was like his mum's house, and that wasn't it. I wasn't taking drugs anyway, but I think Dave might have been still at that point. Not sure. But it's important to say, because it's not a drug experience. And we were talking in the front room again late at night about these kind of topics or whatever. And he was saying that the whole house was very clear, because she in the shop, she was smudging it or doing some sort of thing like that. And I fell into that place. And that was the first time it happened, apart from my sister. And first time it had happened, in a new place. And I didn't want to bring it up to Dave, so I never said it to him, because he was talking about how clear and the house was and all that. I was going, well, actually, this is really creepy, because I've sunk down a bit into some other realm or whatever, and I'm someone's fucking looking at me here, or some entity is looking at me, or I'm looking at myself from a different perspective, or whatever this thing is. So that was kind of creepy, and that was a bit more creepy because it's you're in a new house, you're surrounded by people who've been talking to Jimi Hendrix, and who can look at your past lives and all that kind of thing, and yeah, so that kind of freaked me out. But we ended up chatting online on the internet to someone. This was back chat rooms had just started, and the internet was dial up through phone and all that. So that was that. Now, the next time it happened to me is much later. So this is about another 5 or 6 years. Well, next time I can remember it happening to me. I mean, it could have happened on and off. And at this point, I was back reading a lot of Stuart Wilde but it was later kind of days where he got very kind of heavy and intense, whatever. So we'd be talking an awful lot about like the Greys, the UFOs, and aliens, and bad shit happening and people coming in. And I was living on my own in a house, just in the outskirts of town, and I had a room up in the attic, like in the it was like a bungalow, but it was up in the attic kind of thing, so not quite a dormer. And I just had this. I was just thinking about these things, and then I got to that place again, and all I could feel about was that that thing of my sense being watched, whatever, it was the Greys, it was the UFOs, it was aliens, it was all these things. And I was like getting close to being quite terrified about it, because just because this feeling it's like it's because it's a physical. It feels there's a physicality to it. It certainly feels that way. It feels like it's real more than you're anxious or you're scared or you're terrified watching a horror film. Like it's something that there's something tangible to it. Almost like you could taste it or touch it. Touch it. Like there's a tactileness. That's a word to it. And the way I got out of it in that one is because it was the greys, and I was thinking of them. He was talking about, excuse me, like them coming through the walls and coming in and kind of getting at you. And my next door neighbours, when I was growing up and I was a kid, were the greys. So it was like Peter Grey and Rosemary Grey. So instead of seeing those, big-eyed greys coming in through the walls, I changed it to my neighbours. This old, not old, but well, they're old now, but them kind of late middle-aged couple coming in my walls trying to scare me, pretending they're aliens, and not the classic Banish with Laughter. I didn't know of Banish with Laughter time, but that's what it was. That cleared that place for me at that point. So it happened recently enough in the last year again, over a sustained period of time, and it happened in an interesting time in that I started to wake up after 3 o'clock. And 3 o'clock, depending on what source you want to read, between 3 and 4 is the witching hour. It's the hour that is, odd things are meant to happen. That's how it's suggested is the hour of the occult or the witching hour, whatever. I've heard other hours and I've heard other things. It's just, but I have come across it more than in a numerous amount of places about 3 o'clock. 3 a.m. being the witching hour. So I probably had that in the back of my mind, but I found it very, very strange that I was waking up every night at 3 o'clock. Now, it's not too strange to wake up during the night, and I do wake up because I drink an awful lot of water, so I have to get up to pee. But it's usually at different times and at different, it could be 2:30, it could be 5 o'clock, it could be, but this was like 3 o'clock, 3:01, 3:04, like in at the very end of it, and I would wake up in that place. That it felt like I was being watched, like there's someone in the room, that there's there's a presence. It's this presence of being watched and a lowering of the, again, I want to say temperature, but it's not temperature, the lowering of the atmosphere of the room. It's kind of like when you wake up from a nightmare and reality just isn't quite right because you're still in that kind of agogic state of half your mind isn't switched on yet or whatever. So it's kind of that waking up thing. And I probably would have dismissed it as that had I not had these previous experiences of that place. So I would wake up and it was the sense of a male presence kind of looking at me, being sussing me out there. Not looking at me, wanting me to know that he was there, that was there. That's what the feeling was. That's what was coming through it. That whatever this was, rather than it was looking at me, and I called it looking at me, it wanted me to know that it was there. And I'd just kind of get up and I'd go to the toilet, and it would be, so we into the ensuite, so that would have pervaded all. So it was kind of around me. It wasn't just in the when I was lying in bed or whatever. It was still when I was up and I had the light switched on. It was still there, and it's eerie. It was thing. So this went on for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it wouldn't be every night, but it would be like at least 4 or 5 times a week or whatever. And I was kind of going, I did the usual things that you do. I did, banishments. I didn't do banishment. I did like smudging, and I did clearing and get the windows out cleaned. Cleaned, the room was cleaned up, but cleaned with the intention of trying to get this out. I put protection stuff on the doors. I protection symbols, protection words, all that kind of things, and it would still happen. I'd have the door open, if the door closed, it was the same thing each time. So it eventually came to the point then on whatever, week 3, whatever, and I woke up and there it was. And still, it's not terrifying. Like, it's not, I wasn't immobilized or I wasn't paralyzed with fear. It was just kind of, this is freaky, this is creepy, whatever. But at obviously this point, I just got sick of it. And I just said, hey, either do something or fuck off. And that it went away. Not it's the present hanging around that night, and then it hasn't come back since. It came back. That's a lie. So it came back once since, and it wasn't as intense or whatever. So yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's definitely that place, and it's something that had it just been me who had experienced it, that it would be easier to dismiss, but that it's something that my sister experienced and they could describe in exactly the same way. And you could say, "Oh, whoever said it first." It's I. You can say that if you want. It's not what happened. It was definitely a shared experience of the physical world changing, and this sense of being stared at, or more rightly, wanting whatever it was to know that someone was paying attention to you because you were talking or thinking about these things. And um, so as I always say, I doubt I'm particularly special or particularly in any way special or unique. So I have to assume that this kind of thing happens to more than just me. So I would be interested in hearing your thoughts about it and your experiences. Have you had something similar? Have you had something that echoes the same kind of feelings? This sense of being stared at, more than in the Rupert Sheldrake sense of someone actually staring at you on the street or whatever. It's this a presence paying attention to you, looking at you, and you've been aware of that. And did you come up with something? Wouldn't it be interesting if other people called it that place too? That would be interesting. And have you any ideas what it is? What was actually happening there? Is it more than just the psychological feeling of because you're a bit scared or whatever? Rule nothing out. Could be any of those things, but it's an interesting phenomenon all the same. So that's that place. Um, so yeah, there will be more blogs coming up soon on the blog. I'm currently in the middle of writing one about about throwing holy chaos hand grenades, which will probably be up in the blog actually by the time that this comes out. Maybe, who knows? So check me out. Check me out. Check me out. People, check me out. Check out the blog. There will be more on it. It's getting kind of an overhaul at the minute, and I'm spending and wasting hours and hours on WordPress behind the scenes for things that people will probably not know. But the site is running much, much faster thanks to the patrons on Patreon who helped fund my site upgrade. So if you would like to be part of that and help me do more of these things, then go to tommykelly.com, TOMMIE, and pledge for as little as $1 a month. Otherwise, check out adventuresinwoowoo.com, check out the YouTube page, check out my Twitter, which is at Tommy Kelly, check out the Facebook, there's 47's Facebook group, there's all those things. And that's it, yeah. Have a good one. I hope you enjoyed that. Leave some comments, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.